During Julius Caesar's first winter as the governor of Cisalpine Gaul, Transalpine Gaul, and Illyricum, he returned to Roman territory to tend to his administrative duties, while his right-hand man, Labienus, wintered with the army in Gaul. During this time, Labienus kept Caesar updated with regular reports. Late in the winter, rumors started to circulate that the people in northeastern Gaul, the Belgae, were considering forming a loose confederation, aligned against the Romans. The Belgae were alarmed by the fact that the Romans were taking such an active role in Gallic affairs. Moreover, the Romans appeared to be making themselves comfortable in Gaul by wintering there in a semi-permanent camp. By the way, the Belgae were right to be alarmed. After receiving these reports from Labienus, Caesar began to raise 2 more legions in Cisalpine Gaul, which brought his total up to 8. This is something worth keeping in mind. When the Senate had assigned Caesar his provinces, they had assigned him 4 legions to go along with them. Now Caesar had doubled this number, without getting any approval from the Senate. This wasn't an issue yet, but it would become one later. After his 2 legions were up and running, Caesar went north and met up with Labienus and the rest of his army. He was now in the command of around 35,000 to 40,000 men, after you factor in his earlier losses. When he got there, he sent messages to some friendly tribes neighboring the Belgae, asking them to keep an eye on Belgae activities. They reported back, and each told the same story. The Belgae were mustering a massive army, so Caesar marched north in response. When he entered Belgae territory, the first tribe he encountered, called the Remi, fell all over themselves swearing that they never intended to join this anti-Roman confederacy. To prove their allegiance, they told Caesar everything they knew. According to the Remi, the Belgae now consisted of 290,000 people. We have no way of verifying this number, but we do know that the Belgae army was quite large, with a lot of infighting between tribes. By the way, here's a handy little tip. These ancient sources have this nasty habit of trying to inflate the size of enemy armies by sneaking women and children into the counts. Here's the trick. Any society with a high mortality rate tends to be around 50% children. Also 50% female, obviously. So you take the given number, divide it by 4, take a little bit off to account for the elderly, and that gives you a very rough estimate as to the maximum number of fighting age males in that society. In this case, we get something like 70,000 men. That's a plausible number, and we have some anecdotal evidence to back it up. So anyway, back to the action. By now the Belgae were on the move. The first target in their sights were the Remi, who were now passing information to the Romans. The Belgae advanced on a town called Bjoerklund, which was the capital of the Remi. Caesar responded and also moved towards Bjoerklund. As he approached the town, he came to a bridge across a river that the Romans called the Axona, and we now call the Ain. Before crossing the river, Caesar had his men construct a small fort. He was now entering enemy territory, and he needed to protect this bridge. It was now his only link to friendly territory, and to his food shipments. He left a pretty large garrison there, 6 cohorts, almost 3,000 men. By this time, the Belgae had reached the Remi capital. The Remi sent a message to Caesar, saying that they wouldn't be able to hold out for very long. That night, Caesar had a bunch of skirmishers sneak into the Remi capital, under the cover of darkness. The next day, when the Belgae attempted to approach the gates, they were met with a barrage of Roman missiles, so intense that they were forced to pull back and reevaluate their plans. At this point, they probably realized that there were now Romans fighting alongside the Remi. With this new information, they immediately abandoned their plan to take the Remi capital and marched towards the Roman army. Caesar recalled his skirmishers, but otherwise stayed put. He deployed up on a hill, with the Axona River behind him and a bit of swampy, wet land in front of him. This was a strong defensive position. He put his 6 experienced legions at the front, with his 2 green legions in reserve, just like he had done in the past. The Belgae arrived, and over the next several days, not much happened. There were some cavalry skirmishes, but little else. It was a standoff. The Romans used this time to dig a long trench back from their line in order to prevent a Belgae attack on the flanks. The ditches stretched way back behind the Roman line and ended with small elevated wooden fortifications. On these structures were a bunch of soldiers manning scorpions. If you don't know what a Roman scorpion is, picture a giant crossbow big enough to fire bolts the size of pool cues. Even though the Belgae outnumbered the Romans by a lot, attacking through a swampy area and then uphill was pretty suicidal. Even worse, the Romans were digging in, meaning that the Belgae were losing their advantage by the day. They needed to force Caesar down off that hill. The easiest way to do this would be to cut off his food supply, and the easiest way to do that would be to take control of that bridge. But as we know, Caesar had already thought of this, which is why he left almost 3,000 men to defend it in the first place. The Belgae formed a group of as many as 10,000 men to go and take the bridge. Their plan was this: ford the river, swing around, and attack the Romans defending the bridge before anybody realized what was happening. Then, if Caesar wanted to be stupid enough to try and retake the bridge with 10,000 Belgae on one side and 60,000 on the other, that was up to him. If not, he would be cut off, and they would just starve him out. Assembling 10,000 men and having them cross a river is no small thing, and Caesar could see it all happening clear as day from his hilltop perch. Caesar obviously didn't want to abandon the hilltop, since forcing Caesar down off the hilltop was the entire point of the exercise. So he left all of his infantry in place, but gathered together all of his cavalry and all of his skirmishers. Caesar then personally led them down off the hill, across the bridge, and to the Belgae crossing. He moved with exceptional speed, and when he got there, only a small number of Belgae had actually completed the crossing. He charged this group with his cavalry, killing most and driving the rest off. Then, when his skirmishers caught up, they opened up on the Belgae still crossing the river, throwing javelins and slinging stones. The Belgae mid-crossing couldn't handle this heat. Some made it to the other side, at which time they were simply cut down by the cavalry waiting for them. Many were killed in the middle of the river, and the rest turned back. The Belgae plan failed miserably, and now they were in a weaker position than ever. There was a big meeting between the Belgae tribes. There was no one leader in command, and there was a lot of infighting. They had not come prepared to conduct a siege, or to spend several months playing cat and mouse with Caesar. Most of the tribes were unhappy. A vote was held, and they decided that they should each go home and resupply. They all agreed to mobilize again if the Romans ever went on the offensive. That night, the Belgae army simply walked off. Caesar had a hard time believing that this wasn't a trap, so he sent Labienus out with 3 legions and all of the cavalry to investigate. While they were gone, Caesar continued to hold their hilltop position, just in case. Labienus stumbled upon some of the Belgae and attacked. To his surprise, it wasn't a trap, and they didn't put up much of a fight. Labienus returned to Caesar and told him that it was exactly what it looked like. The Belgae had gone home. Let's not forget that the entire reason Caesar had come to Belgae territory in the first place was to force the Belgae to stand down. They had. Mission accomplished. Caesar could have taken this opportunity to return south, but he didn't. His campaign against the Belgae would only continue. If you're eager to know what he did next, you're in luck, because I already made that video, right here.